Hello, students. Today we are going to start with the poem A Legend of the Northland. It's written by Phoebe Carey. Legend of the Northland is a ballet. Now, what is a ballad? It's a poem narrating a story in short stanzas. Now, I'm repeating once again, it's in the form of a poem, but it's a story which is spoken or narrated in short stanzas. Now, ballad is such kind of poem which tells a story in short stanzas, and in the poem, all the stanzas comprise 4 lines. So there are 16 stanzas in this poem, and you will be able to hear a story in these stanzas. Ballads are a part of folk culture or popular culture, and these are passed on orally from one generation to the next. And it comprises of traditional stories, and it's passed from, as I just said, generation to generation. So this particular story is of the Northland area, the area which is near the North Pole. So the exact place is not specified, but Northland means the area in the northernmost part of the earth, that is very close to the North Pole. And the legend means a historical story, one which is very old and has been passed on from generations to generations. Now, starting with the first stanza. Now, students, I'll be talking about the poetess at the end of the poem. First stanza. Away, away in the Northland, where the hours of the day are few, and the nights are so long in winter that they cannot sleep them through. So, students, in the first stanza, the poet is talking about the region somewhere near the North Pole or the Northland, as it is spoken in the first line, where the hours of the day are few. Now, students, you must have noticed that, in winters, the day is comparatively shorter than the nights. So, and as all of you know, you must have read in geography also that in the northern part of the earth, it's very cold out there. So when this area experiences winter season, the duration of the night is very long and the duration of the day is very short. So in the third line you can see, and the nights are so long in winter. So it's most of the time, all the year round, it's winters. And they cannot sleep them through. Now in line 4, they here refers to the people who are the inhabitant of this region. So the poet says that the duration of the night time is so long that the people cannot sleep them through. Like how many hours they can sleep? Maximum you require 7 to 8, maximum 9 hours of sleep, but it's quite long. So if they go to bed, take a few hours of sleep, and then they wake up, so it's still night time. So the poet wants to emphasize on the fact that the duration of the night is very long. Now the second stanza. Where they harness the swift reindeer to the sledges when it snows, and the children look like bear's cubs in their funny, furry clothes. Now, where they harness, here again, they means the people of the North Pole or the Northland. They experience severe cold conditions, and as it's a snowy area, and the swift reindeer, they harness the swift reindeer. Harness means to tie the reindeers, with a rope to a sled so that it can be used for transportation and other purposes. As reindeer also is found in the polar region. So what people do, they just tie the reindeers to sledges, and then the reindeers pull the sledges, and that is also used as the means of transport and used to carry the some amount of goods or something. And he also, the poet also tells us that the children look like young ones of a bear because as it is winters, they wear funny looking clothes made of fur, which looks like the furry skin of a bear. So just to save themselves from the cold, parents make their children wear furry clothes, and they look funny in that, or you can say they look sweet in that. Now the third stanza. They tell them a curious story. I don't believe it's true, and yet you will learn a lesson if I tell the tale to you. Now here the poet, she is talking about that They tell them. Now here they is the people or the parents or the elders. Them here is the children. A curious story, I don't believe it's true. Now here the poetess herself is saying that she doesn't believe that it is true, but sometimes the adults of our house, the parents, grandparents, tell us some stories just to teach us a lesson, to teach us a moral. So the poetess herself believes that I don't believe it's true, and yet you may learn a lesson. That the story might not be true, but yes, if you listen to the story, you will learn something from it. There must be some moral in it. So if I tell the tale to you, so the poet is saying that I'll be telling the same tale means story to you. Now moving on to the fourth stanza. Once, when the good Saint Peter lived in the world below and walked about it preaching, just as he did. Now, Saint Peter, here the poet is talking about Saint Peter. Saint, as you all know, like it's a holy person. So the story is about a Saint Peter. So when Saint Peter used to live in the world, now in Christianity people believe that saints, they directly go to the paradise. So here the poet is saying that once, when the good Saint Peter lived in the world below, when he was, you can say, alive, when he was in the world, and went around giving religious lectures to the people, just like all saints do. And then this incident happened. So stanza 5. He came to the door of a cottage in traveling round the earth, where a little woman was making cakes and baking them on the hearth. So the story has started now. So it started with one Saint Peter. As he was a saint, he used to roam here and there, preaching people about good things in life. So one fine day, what happened? He came to the door of a cottage. He reached the door of a cottage, a small, where a little woman, that means a short woman, little woman, not like young woman, but yes, a little woman was baking cakes. And where she was baking them on the hearth. Hearth kya hota hai? It's a fireplace where you do cooking, like it's an oven, which is, you must have noticed, it's built in the walls. So she was baking cake over there. Now stanza 6. And being faint with fasting, for the day was almost done, he asked her from her store of cakes to give him a single one. So now, being faint with fasting, for the day was almost done. So in the second line, students, the poet is talking about that, it was almost evening, you can say, the day was almost done. It was, Saint Peter must have, traveled all over the place without eating anything, and he was preaching, he was telling good things about the religion, and he didn't eat anything since morning, and he was about to faint because of weakness. So at the end of the day, he went to the cottage and he asked that lady for a single piece of cake from her store of cakes. From her store of cake means she had so many cakes. Store here means like when you have a good amount of things with you, so then you can say. So she had, as she used to bake a lot of cakes, so she had enough cakes, and he just asked her for a single one. And then what happened? Let's see in stanza 7. So she made a very little cake, but as it baking lay, she looked at it, and though it seemed too large to give away. So students, first let me tell you the technicality of this. Like when we bake something, you must have noticed that even when your mom or you bake a cake, so you put it becomes big, it becomes enlarged. So this happens because of some ingredients in that batter. So when she baked a cake, she saw that after it was being baked, it appeared quite big. And as she was very selfish and she was very greedy, She thought that why she should give such a big cake to someone, that too, without any money. So she didn't want to share her things. So, and so what she did, she thought that it's too large to give away, that to give it in charity, it's too large. So that shows that she was selfish and greedy. Now moving on to the stanza 8. Therefore she needed another, and still a smaller one, but it looked, when she turned it over, as large as the first had done. Now, as she was selfish, and so what she did, she needed another. Need means like to make dough from flour. When as your in your house also, you must have noticed when moms bake chapatis or something, or when something is to be cooked with the bakery through oven. So we need to dough the flour. So, and still a smaller one. So she just took a small amount of dough, and when she turned it over, and when she just put it in the baking tray, it again again appeared as big as the previous one. Again she was not ready to give this smaller cake to Saint Peter. So she was very greedy. She didn't want to give it something in charity as big as that cake. So what happened? Now stanza 9. Then she took a tiny scrap of dough and rolled it flat and baked it thin as a wafer. But she couldn't part with that. Now look at the miserliness of this lady. So this third time, she took a very small amount of dough and rolled it, the way we roll the chapatis. So here, the poetess Phoebe Carey says that she rolled and rolled to lay emphasis on the fact that she rolled the dough and made it very thin like a wafer and baked it. But again, she was so greedy that she couldn't give that thin piece of bread to the saint. Now this time it was very thin, but still she was feeling that it's too big to give away. Now then what happened? For she said, my cakes that seem too small when I eat of them myself are yet too large to give away. And she put them on the shelf. Now the woman, she just reasoned that she was trying to convince herself that when she eats that cakes, she felt that they are very small, but when she has to give it to someone, she feels that they are too big to give away. So she was still not ready to give away that thin wafer of cake. So what she did, she put away all the cakes on the shelf of her kitchen, and she did not give any cake to Saint Peter, who was hungry and who was about to faint because of hunger. So you see that she was so greedy. So then let's see what was the reaction of Saint Peter. Then what he did? Then good Saint Peter grew angry, for he was hungry and faint, and surely such a woman was enough to provoke a saint. Now Saint Peter was angry, and he was angry as he was weak, he was hungry, and not only this was the reason to become angry, he was angry at the greediness of that lady, as he observed that this selfish woman was not ready to give him even a small cake. So this behavior of the greedy woman angered the saint, and he was already, as I said, he was already feeling very weak, feeling hungry, and this greediness just angered him more. So then what happened? As he was saint, one should be very careful with the good people, and he said, you are far too selfish to dwell in a human form, to have both food and shelter and fire to keep you warm. Now as he was angry, he just could not control himself, and he said that, in fact, he cursed the woman. Cursed, you understand, when someone is angry, when you hurt someone, then that person curses you. So the woman had said that she was very selfish, she did not deserve to look like a human being. And Saint Peter also added that God had given her food, shelter, fire to keep you warm, but still you are becoming thankless, you are becoming selfish, for all the resources you have. So Saint Peter said that you do not want to share them with anybody, because these all things are given by God to you, and you can't even share a small amount of cake to someone who is hungry. So basically Saint Peter was saying that everything is provided to us by God, and when time comes we should give it back to, to the human beings in the form of charity or something. So let's see what happens in stanza 13. Now you shall build as the birds do, and shall get your scanty food by boring and boring and boring all day in the hard dry wood. Now St. Peter was angry and he cursed. First he made her realize that everything is given to you, your food, shelter, and the fire that keeps you warm in that winters is provided to you by God. And so he said that you don't deserve all this. So what curse he gave? He said that you would become a bird because you do not deserve the human form. So he said that you shall become a bird, and just like birds build their houses by boring into the wood. Boring means, like, with their beak, they just, bore the wood. And he said that you should collect very little food by working hard the entire day. Similarly, he said that the woman should also work hard in the dry wood all day and get little food and make a small place for herself to live in. So he cursed her that she would become a bird, and this bird was, let's see which one, and so, and then what happened in stanza 4, let's see. Then up she went through the chimney, never speaking a word, and out of the top flew a woodpecker, for she was changed to a bird. Now this bird was a woodpecker. This lady was changed into a woodpecker, which is a bird. I'm sure you all must be knowing. And as soon as Saint Peter cursed the woman, she did not even get a chance to speak for herself, as it's in the second line, never speaking a word. She was not even, it was so prompt, it was so immediate, because that very moment she flew up to the roof through the chimney and flew out in the form of a bird. And Saint Peter's curse had converted the woman into a bird, and this bird was woodpecker. You must have noticed, the woodpecker. The woodpecker bird, does a hole in the tree by boring it. And let's see what happens. Stanza 15. She had a scarlet cap on her head, and that was left the same, but all the rest of her clothes were burned black as a coal in the flame. Now she had a scarlet cap. So when she was a woman, she was wearing a scarlet cap. Scarlet is a very bright red color. So students, you must have noticed, as it's just a story, that a woodpecker has, some kind of thing on its head, that red color. So here what happened, that only that thing remained the same on the bird, and rest of her clothes were burned black as a coal in the flame. As in the oven you see the black coal burning. So everything burned except the red colored cap that she was wearing. And let's see the last stanza. And every country schoolboy has seen her in the wood, where she lives in the trees till this very day, boring and boring for food. Now, in the last stanza, the poet is talking about that, every country schoolboy, like people who live in the countryside, away from the main city, that is countryside. Even the small children who go to school must have seen this kind of bird in the woods, the woodpecker. I'm sure you all must have seen that, if not in real, in the books or maybe in television. And they see that she stays there all day and keeps on digging the wood with her beak to collect her food. So that curse is there. Whenever any child sees this kind of bird, then the elders tell them this story. And they say that the bird used to be a woman earlier. She was very greedy, and she was cursed by Saint Peter and turned into a bird. And by observing that bird, the young children, they get a teaching that they should not be greedy. So this is the basic moral of the story, and that one should not be greedy, and everything is provided to us by God. And if some needy person, some hungry person, or any time kind of need is come up with some other person, we should try to help them out, because ours is nothing, everything is, as I said, is provided by God to us. And we should never feel that this is ours or we should not give. We should always keep our hands in the giving position. We should try to help others, we should not be greedy. So students, this ballet is written by Phoebe Carey. She was born in September 4, 1824, and died in July 31 on 1871. And she was an American poet, and she had a younger sister also. She was also a poet. Her name was Alice Carey. And both the sisters were very creative, and they published poems in 1849. And then each went on to publish volumes of her own. So initially they combined their poems and published it, and afterwards they published their own work. And after their death since 1871, joint anthologies of the sisters' unpublished poems were also compiled. So both of them were successful poets. I'm sure students, you have enjoyed the poem and learned a lesson, and I'm sure you already are good at heart people, but still one should feel that we should not be greedy and try to help others. Thank you so much.